Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the IMAA's Insights and Innovation series. Today, we have the amazing LinkedIn talking to us about why company culture is now an advantage. And we definitely see that in our figures in our Pulse survey. Before I hand over to the amazing Jenny, who's going to introduce David and James, I just want to remind everyone about Operation Bounce Back tomorrow. If you're not attending in person, please tune in. You should have a link to it. It's going to be our biggest event in the history of the IMAA, and we're beyond excited about it. There's a bit of a blurb about it in the trade press this morning about it being the first carbon neutral event, media carbon neutral event in the world, which we're excited. But we're not here for that. We are here to talk to the LinkedIn family and great partners of the IMAA, and they're going to talk to us about company culture. I'll hand over to Jenny.
Hi, good morning all. Thanks, Sam, and thanks to the IMAA for having us here. So I'm Jenny Wagner. I'm the independent agency team lead at LinkedIn, and I'll be here for you if you have any question after this presentation. So let's kick things. So we know that independent agencies are experiencing strong growth, and the recent years have seen them win pitches with like bigger accounts. And agencies cannot service clients without adequate resourcing. So talent remains a top priority. And we know that most indies are expecting to recruit more staff in the next 12 months. And the talent now are more purpose and value driven than ever before. Compensation is no longer a top priority. A thriving culture is that puts human first is what's important for them. So today we'll be discussing what talent are looking for when considering new opportunities. We talk about how the leaders of today can cultivate thriving culture to unlock employees' engagement and retention. So I'm joined today by David Bellis. He's a director for LinkedIn Talent Solution here in Australia and New Zealand. And David and his team are responsible for helping organizations the way they plan, hire, and develop talent. So this is all possible through the disruptive technology and unique data and insight from LinkedIn 800 million members and 57 million companies. Over the past 9 years at LinkedIn, David has had the opportunity to lead the growth and distribution efforts across all sectors at LinkedIn. So when LinkedIn acquired lynda.com in 2015, an online learning company, David was appointed as head of learning for Australia and New Zealand, and he helped oversee the successful transition to LinkedIn Learning, which is a big part of our business those days. We are also joined today by James Chapman. James is a strategic and result-driven professional with over 15 years experience in banking industry before moving to management consulting. Being a dual Olympian with a silver medal, James understands what it takes to unlock peak performance for the individual or a group in any context. So James' expertise includes mindset shift, behavioral change, focus, resilience, clarity, structure thinking, and strategic leadership, whilst understanding the realities, commerciality, and truth of the real world. So James has coached individuals, executives, and teams to the new way of thinking, working, and performing by understanding the whole person to unlock a leader within. So his strategic mind, system thinking, excellent communication, and ability to make sense of the way we think, feel, and behave in different environments has enabled James to provide the shifts leaders need to learn, grow, and accelerate towards their goals. Now I'm going to hand it over to David to tell us why company culture is not a hiring advantage. So I'm going to share my screen.
Thank you, Jenny, for that great welcome and intro. So yeah, I'll just wait till you get the deck started. And because we're working remotely, I'll just ask you the next slide when we get to it.
Oh,
so we can go back one. All right. Okay. Well, thanks again. And thanks for having me. As Jenny said, my name is David Bellis, and I'm a director here for LinkedIn's Talent Solutions team. So today we're going to talk about company culture, but more importantly, we're going to talk about why companies need to fine-tune their culture to meet the expectations of their teams to be looked at as humans first and employees second. I know a lot of us already do that, but that's what this report has showed. So during this session, there's three main things that we're going to cover. So the first is how a caring culture has become the pivotal asset for companies worldwide. The second thing we're going to cover is how we need to rethink when and where we work as it builds more equitable cultures. And then third, which I probably think is the most important, why well-being is essential to nurture a healthy culture that's built on care and compassion. So if you could please go to the next slide. So right now, there's no doubt company culture is at a turning point. And it was already being reshaped with digital transformation, the rise of millennials and Gen Z. Add to that the Great Reshuffle, the pandemic, all the lockdowns. It's allowed us to all realize the fragility of life, where most of us have started to rethink how and where we want to spend our time. So last year, we conducted a survey to understand what matters most to job seekers around the world. And the number one thing that we learned from job seekers about the good employee value proposition, they're looking for good work-life, or the switch now, good life-work balance, followed by compensation still is number 2 and benefits number 3. And these stats are consistent amongst all job seekers in Australia and New Zealand. Gone are the days where companies could lead with perks. We know this firsthand at LinkedIn. So think ping pong tables, catered breakfast, catered lunch, the in-house gym, the trainers. The whole idea was to create work to be a home away from home. Well, that's no longer how today's world operates in order to cover the entire workforce. So in order for companies to attract, retain, and grow their talent, we need to meet employees where they are right now. And that requires employees to be seen as human beings first. We talked to over a dozen talent leading professionals around the world. And then we've also reviewed the LinkedIn data from millions of employee engagements, and get this, billions of actions on our platform, just to understand how a caring culture has become the pivotal asset for companies worldwide. This also formed our 2022 Global Talent Trends Report, which just came out last week. And then my intention for today is to share just a few highlights of the report. We're not going to go through the whole thing. And then, of course, you should get a copy of it after the session if you like. If you could please go to the next slide. So part of our research, we noticed a consistent theme that came up amongst all job seekers. And the number one thing was that candidates care about culture when they pick a job. In ANZ alone, the percentage of candidates who consider company culture a top priority when picking a job is 7% higher than the global average of 47%, only behind the Netherlands, as you can see here at 50%. So it may be time to start thinking about how you can build and improve on your company's culture and look at ways to be front and center about it in your company posts, job listings, et cetera, because after all, it clearly is important to candidates in your marketplace. If you can go to the next slide, please. So I thought this quote about culture from Amy Schultz, Canva's global head of TA, was interesting. Amy says, and I'll just read the quote so I get it right, your employee value proposition must reflect your employees, what your employees really feel and value today, not in 2019, to attract those folks who will add to a company's culture today and into the future. The idea is we need to take a forward-looking approach to culture, and that the past is the foundation of your identity. It should inform but not dictate how you want to shape your culture or your EVP for your employees today and the future. Next slide, please. So as culture becomes more and more important, we're seeing from our research that a shift to a more human-centered company culture, and it has a number of characteristics: flexibility, asynchrony, trust, belonging, and the focus on well-being. But what's interesting about this list is they're all interchangeable. For example, flexibility and asynchrony, trust and belonging, asynchrony and trust, and so on and so on. So what's important is that these different facets are all present in the culture, and that we acknowledge the connection, and that these facets are all grounded and connected in the vision and values of your organization. If you can go to the next slide, please. Okay, yeah, are you there? Yes, all right. There. Yes, that is it. Okay, so I want to just jump into two of the characteristics. The report has several, but I just want to focus on two. And it's where we're going to spend the rest of today. The first is flexible work, and then employee well-being. You can go to the next slide, please. All right, let's start with flexibility. And this is a big one. It's a key driver of a more human-centered company culture. And as we build more diverse and inclusive workforces, it's going to be apparent that our people have different work needs. So as such, that whole one-size-fits-all no longer works for everyone. I don't think it ever really did work for everyone, but it's more apparent today. If you can go to the next slide, please. So this is what the data tells us. It says that people who are satisfied that their organization is doing a good job of providing work flexibility in terms of time and location are 2.6 times more likely to be happy at work, but also 2.1 times more likely to recommend others to work at that employer. And then we're also seeing that flexibility is becoming a more of a key value proposition for employers. And for LinkedIn company posts alone, we're seeing a 35% greater engagement when we just see the word mention of flexibility in that job post or just a post alone. So it's important to consider your message to candidates and your employees. I mean, in ANZ alone, we saw a 60% increase in posts that mentioned flexibility and 313 more mentions of flexibility in company posts since 2019 alone. So these are pretty significant increases. If you can go to the next slide, please. So when we spoke to HR leaders in our research, there's been a theme of this human-centered coming through and the sense of waking up to a collective aha moment of work needing to fit into our personal lives rather than the other way around, the concept of the life-work balance versus work-life. And there are aspects of flexibility in the context of culture that I want to bring up, which is summarized here in a sentiment shared by the CHRO at IBM. It says, rethinking how the organization gets work done, and two, the balance of outputs versus inputs, i.e. the performance versus the presenteeism. So Nikki Lamoureux, who's the CHRO at IBM, she shared with us their perspective that flexibility will become the forcing function that drives companies away from presenteeism and towards performance. Organizations must now measure outcomes, not activity. And I'm seeing this, and I know we're seeing this at our teams as well. And an example I can have is just a week ago, actually a couple of weeks ago, I was meeting with one of my managers, one of my direct reports. And she's like, geez, such and such, he's not responding to my emails. He's not gonna come up on Teams. He's not responding to me as quickly as I'd like. I have no idea what's going on. And I said, well, hasn't he already met his commitments for the quarter? And hasn't he done everything that's expected? She goes, oh yeah, he's done everything. Like he's good. I just don't know where he's at. And it just made me think, like, in the old days, if you had a commitment to the business and they're sitting next to you in the office and it was done, you could at least eyeball them. You saw they were at work. Who knows what he's doing now? But the thing is it's all about the outcomes now. And that's one of the greatest shifts that we're seeing now. And some of the jobs, of course, we can't do them remotely. So Nichols says flexibility is still the key, that companies are offering job shares, different shifts, compressed work weeks, and other forms of flexible scheduling to make sure that on-site employees can also shape work around their personal lives. If you do the next slide, please, Jenny. And I'm sure you and your organizations have navigated over the last 18 months that building this hybrid workforce, it takes a lot of careful planning just to ensure that remote workers have what they need to be productive, feel connected, and treated equitably. And from our conversations with HR and talent leaders globally, from our global talent trends research, we saw some recurring tips and advice to help make flexibility work. So I won't call all of them out, but I'll call out 4. So the first is establishing guidelines for how to treat remote workers. Guidelines like IBM, they have this work from home pledge, which they laid out during the pandemic that helps employees prioritize physical and emotional health. The second is creating a level playing field for all employees. So to ensure that your work from home employees aren't overlooked when it comes to career and salary progression. The third is reinforce employees' bonds with virtual events. Remote work can still can place demands on company culture, but virtual events foster social connection. What I find interesting about this one is we do have people at LinkedIn that have come back to the office. They're like, hey, I don't want to do another quiz. I don't want to do another Zoom catch up. Like, I'm good. I'm seeing real humans. But this is something that we still need to keep in mind, that not everyone's going to come into the office. So how can you ensure that everyone feels included? And then the fourth, and I've already, I think, driven the point home on this, is focusing on results, not the work hours. Reward your teams for their ability to meet their goals rather than their hours spent in front of the desk. Next slide, please. Well-being. Now, this is another critical driver of company culture, and one for me that's on the top of my personal priority list, especially with all the challenges that I'm sure many of you also face, that I know my team personally face with regard to mental health challenges and well-being. This is a big one. And for me, it just starts with care and compassion. Companies are learning that their own well-being is closely linked to their employees' mental, physical, emotional, and financial well-being. And so they're now finding ways to show they truly care. Next slide. So as part of our research, we spoke with Kira Warren, who's an organizational development specialist at Suncorp here locally. And she said, employee well-being should be at the center of all organizations, creating a safe space where all our employees can come to work as their authentic selves, connected to our people, purpose, and culture. This sense of connection creates a better workplace for everyone and a more engaged team to drive performance into the future. When you look at our LinkedIn data, our data supports that sentiment. Next slide, please. And from our global research, we see that employees who feel cared about at work are 3.2 times more likely to feel happier at work and 3.7 times more likely to recommend working for their company. And we're also seeing companies on LinkedIn are discussing well-being in their posts and their job ads or any of their posts. And more people are engaging with this type of content. And fun fact, in particular, women. These can be helpful insights to consider as you start to map out your employee brand and employee value proposition strategies in the upcoming year. In Australia and New Zealand alone, the likelihood of a woman engaging with well-being in a company post is up 89% compared to your average post that doesn't include it. And overall, we've seen a 67% increase in company posts using the word well-being in ANZ since 2019. But of course, well-being is more than about yoga classes or health insurance. It's about making compassion a pillar of your company culture. It's about structuring the way that work gets done in the organization so that you can optimize productivity, innovation, not just the working hours or time in front of the desk. So, we just need to rethink the processes such as shortening or eliminating meetings. For me and my team, and I'm sure it's not rocket science or something new. One of the things we do now is if we're looking at meetings that are coming up and I do this, I'm like, you know what? All I'm doing is giving a bunch of information or updates from meetings I've been attending. So now I cancel the meeting and I just send an email saying that meeting could have been an email. And in that email, I put all the bullets and say, if you have any questions about that, let's chat about it in our one-on-one. And let me give you back the hour. Next slide, please. So I want to share some helpful takeaways based on what we learned from HR and talent leaders around the world on how to help employees achieve better work-life balance. So first, give workers more time in their day. Encourage employees to block personal time off in their calendars or agree to no meeting periods. For my teams, we do 2 weeks a quarter, or every 3 months, just 2 weeks of no internal meeting weeks. We can still have meetings and that's open, but anything that's scheduled as recurring, like a team meeting, one-on-ones, we clear those out. The second is we carve out some time for company shutdown. Last year at LinkedIn, we did a full week off. This year we've designated Fridays, like for the next 5 or 6 months, Friday, no meeting days, or lift up no internal meeting days, or even just days off as a nice surprise. Because studies are showing that in some parts of the world, employees are reluctant to take their vacation days, and carving these days out can really help your employees recharge and re-energize. And since doing that, our employee voice survey scores have increased in well-being and work life every quarter since we've done that. The third is to train your managers to be empathetic leaders. Many companies are training people leaders to spot the signs of emotional distress and to offer more support. So at LinkedIn, we obviously are leveraging LinkedIn Learning, not only to invest in our own staff, but especially our leaders. So we've made all the managers watch courses like how to manage remote teams or how to give and receive feedback. And this has really helped quite a bit. And the fourth is just using people analytics to identify problems. So looking for patterns like after hours work and meeting overload that can cause some burnout. I don't know about you guys, but I always like to see those insights, the Viva Insights email that says, how many times did you email during a meeting, or were you on time, or hours spent after hours responding to emails? I actually find that quite helpful for myself and how I show up, and have now started to use the delay send email, because I know if I send an email after hours, someone might feel compelled to respond. So I'm trying to just only make sure those emails are during what are business hours. Next slide, please. So I want to conclude with an example of how LinkedIn's prioritizing well-being in our workplace culture. It's a program that our employees lead, our employee experience team, and we call it Lift Up. Now, I already mentioned it earlier, but the whole idea to Lift Up is to help employees make the best of their new work from home reality. So we launched this program to address issues like burnout, anxiety, social disconnection, and it includes an online always-on resource hub and a series of fun events. And we're talking like cooking classes, how to make things, rock band, talented people on the team that are doing music, all kinds of fun stuff. And the whole idea is to put the spark back into everyone, to lift our heads higher, and then create some fun along the way. Next slide, please. So the team first spent time understanding what is it that's top of mind for employees by asking in our EVS surveys, just a simple question in our Glint survey. It said, how are you? That was it. It was the last question, open-ended. And we've got lots of valuable insights. And these are the 4 main takeaways. We had over 8,000 comments on the how are you. So the first was about burnout. The employee insight here is that there's no start and end of a workday boundary. So employees are working too many hours, the lines are blurred, it's really gray. And they feel like they're working way too many hours. The solution is surprise day off, encourage people to take vacation. And then obviously we have no meeting in days. For us, we've also created rules of, try to not schedule meetings during someone's lunch hour. If you see 12 to 1 is the only time that's open, don't fill it for a quick chat. Like let's give those people time to grab something to eat or exercise or whatever they need to do, and then blocking in those buffer times. The second is the isolation and depression. This is huge and very, very real. So the employee insight here was living alone or being concerned with their own health or the illness of a loved one. So the solutions here for us is we brought our employee assistant program and details back to light and brought to attention. We had a mental health awareness week, and then more times in programs which we just launched a couple months ago, the acronym WFAC, WFAC, work from another country. So we allowed LinkedIn everyone to work from another country for up to 30 days without considering it annual leave once the borders open. So I've already had several people go back to the UK, which couldn't be any more opposite on timelines, but work at the hours that you need to work, but also go see your parents, your loved ones, your friends, family, whatever it may be. And that has really landed quite well. The third is the social component. The employee insight here was they miss building social connection outside of their immediate team. So some of our solutions is we've got a manager community, we've got different group chats, different teams, and lots of social activities and in-days, global hack days, do-it-yourself maker classes, 100 wellness classes that are offered per week. And then last week, we did something we hadn't done forever. We got it was about 110 employees together. It was supposed to be outdoors, but it got rained out, but we found we had a plan B, big gym, the Cook and Phillip gym in CBD. And we had a little LinkedIn Olympics. So it was the egg and spoon race, the sack race, the wheelbarrow race, all the things that you remember doing as a kid, just to bring back the human connection and that culture. And it wasn't mandatory. And of course, unfortunately, I missed out on it because I'm in isolation for 7 days, 2 more to go. The fourth piece here is the parenting piece. The key insight here is challenged with balancing work and family. This is so real, especially if you have kids. From the homeschooling issues that came up whenever the schools were locked down, not having daycare, having COVID, kids getting unwell. How am I going to work and look after the little one? So one of the things that we introduced is 12 weeks paid of emergency family accommodation. So those 12 weeks, it's like annual leave days, but they're not annual leave days. And they're like sick days, but not sick days. It's where you need to look after someone in the family. So we've given those 12 days and then flex work options. Next slide, please. So I know that was a lot of stuff, but there's, I hope you found today's presentation helpful and help you with some ideas with your own organizational culture. But there's 3 things I want to leave you with before we move on to the panel, which is 1, company culture is not static, it's ever evolving. The second is professionals are placing a premium on flexibility, well-being, and how work fits into their personal lives, not the other way around. And then last, companies that can respond to these new expectations and reimagine where, when, and how work gets done do have a decided edge. So that is for me today, and thank you.
Thank you so much, David. Having recently joined LinkedIn, I have to say that probably company culture was the one thing I was looking for, and never imagined how much well-being and flexibility would have been important for me. The past 2 years been hard. I'm obviously from overseas, so I've been disconnected from my family, and having a company that really look after me in that sense makes a real difference and really makes me want to do more for it. So thanks, that was a great presentation. And I know there's a lot more to that presentation, so I will be able to share the study with everyone after. But I really like that you picked those, the flexibility and well-being, because I think it's really key as an employee and also as a leader. And I would say if you're a leader, it's important to lead with example and really, seize the opportunity to show your employee that, it's important for you too. But now I wanted to jump into a few questions for you, David and James. So, we've been talking about the Great Reshuffle, and there's differing forecasts on whether it's going to continue or at the same rate or if not. And I know that LinkedIn latest data suggests that it could be a multi-year process. It's not going to disappear when the pandemic ends, and the professional will continue to reassess where, how, and why they work. So what are the top 3 tips for agency leaders today on how they can establish a reputation as an employer of choice in the highly competitive agency landscape?
Yeah, good question. And look, I think to respond to that, I think a lot of it just came out of what we just talked about in the presentation. I think the 3 main things to call out, or the 3 tips per your question, is the first tip is company culture. We already know that 47% of Australian candidates care about culture when they pick a job. So that's at the top of the list, followed by compensation and benefits, which we covered. So it may be time to start thinking about how can you build on or improve your company's culture, and look for ways to be front and center about it in your company post and job listings. I mean, I think a quick win and easy takeaway is think about last time you went to look for a job, or what a typical candidate will do. Most of the time, they'll research the exec team, find out what is the voice of the CEO or the execs or my potential next manager. So what is their voice? What are they saying and sharing on LinkedIn? Because that will give you a really good idea of what's happening with the culture and what's important to them. So that's first. The second, which is huge, and I think we've talked about quite a bit now, is the flexibility component. So we've already seen that the company posts on LinkedIn are increased by 35% and have a greater engagement when they mention the word flexibility. So that's important when you consider your value proposition and when you're developing your employer brand. And so this could be about the work location, hybrid versus in the office, working at home only, remote. This could be whatever it makes sense for you. But the pivot towards measuring work done versus time in front of the desk is, to me, that's the big one. So that whole work-life balance versus life-work balance versus work-life is a real thing. And then the third bit is just the well-being, and it's critical. It's been a tough couple of years. So our global research shows that when employees who feel cared about are 3.2 times more likely to feel happier when they're at work, and 3.7 more times likely to recommend this to one of their friends to work there. So when it comes to you guys and your companies, it may be a good idea just to, apologies, there were people walking around everywhere. Welcome to remote work. Everyone's walking through here. But we recently had all our managers attend mental health first aid training, which I personally gained a lot of value from. And it was a good first step for me and the team to first identify when someone's struggling, what you can say, what you shouldn't say, especially recognizing when someone's having a tough time. And this is an area that I think we can improve on, and we're going to continue to iterate. But the well-being is definitely, for me, even though it was the third tip, it'd be right at the top of my list.
Yeah, and actually, I would highly recommend that mental health first aid course. I did it myself, and when working remotely, you don't see people every day. So things you would have seen on walking into the office every day, you don't necessarily pick up on. And I think that this course was really good to help you open to all that. So great course. I really like that. Yeah, thank you.
Agreed. Thank you.
Thanks, David. Now I have a question for you, James.
Yeah.
Hi, how are you? You good?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm very good. Thanks for joining us. we know that talent shortage is a thing. There's also skill shortage in the agency landscape.
Yeah.
And it's leading to increased competition for talent, inflated salaries, accelerated promotion, and more attractive HR policies. So while compensation is important, as we saw, company culture is clearly emerging as the top priority for talent. So do we need to go back to basics and just explore new and innovative ways to rebuild company culture, community outside of the Friday office drink that we used to have, or the chat at the water cooler? How do we achieve this based on the new world we walk in?
Yeah, thanks, Jenny. It's a really good question. It's a question we get asked a lot in our business. So for a bit of background context, our firm Maximus, we advise leaders on leadership, on all elements of leadership, whether it's about understanding self, and that comes from our team of psychologists here, whether it's about understanding the market, so how we immerse ourselves in the market and therefore design strategies to be able to grow the business. And last of all, how do we grow a culture in order to support the strategy? So when we work around those three pillars, we get a lot of questions about how do we support a culture through this period of the Great Reshuffle, the Great Resignation, and we've been calling it the Great Reframe. And so with that in mind, we have to be reframing the way we're thinking about creating and building and evolving culture. And if you think about why people care so much about a culture right now, and David's insights from LinkedIn, that there's such a strong connection between company culture. Why do people care about culture? Because they want to feel intrinsically connected to their careers, right? And we've gone through this period of being disconnected in so many forms. Disconnected through having an LGA approach to the way we think about our lives. I can't believe just use that acronym LGA. Gives me shivers still just to use that word. But people want to feel intrinsically connected. Now, whether it's about their families, whether it's about their friends, whether it's about the people that they work with, they want to feel intrinsically connected because they want a place where they can be themselves. They feel comfortable and safe to be themselves. And it's a place where people can grow, which is a really important aspect of our careers and professions and the places we provide for other people. So what does that mean for employers? What does that mean for business owners? There has to be opportunities to grow. There has to be opportunities to connect. And one of the things that I think we've traded off over the last 2 years globally, because driven by the pandemic, driven by the rules and regulations placed on us by governments, we've traded off growth. People and businesses have traded off growth because we've just wanted to feel safe. We've just wanted to feel stable. We're trying to create a sense of security around us. But then we go into this efficiency model of what's the quickest and easiest way for me to get things done with the least amount of stress. And that's not growth. So if we're reframing, if we're doing the great reframe right now for the future, we need to cast our minds as business owners and as leaders, we need to cast our mind 10 years, 5 years into the future, think about where we need to be, where we need to take the business, where we need to take our people, and create a much longer horizon beyond, the days or the weeks or maybe the quarter or the half that we've been focused on recently. And so this means including, when we're talking about flexibility of work, like David mentioned, reframing those very intentional approaches to creating connection. Now, there's some really practical tips and tricks, but some of the ones that I really like are things like, as a leader of the business, being the first on the call, so you get a chance to chat about who's bought a house lately, for example, right? Being the last on a call to make sure that you say, Jenny, can we just catch up after this? How are you? Right? And the chances, so really intentional, because we don't get to walk past someone's desk or go and have a coffee down at the coffee shop as a break, whatever it might be. But we miss out on those moments. So we have to do a very intentional job as leaders in a flexible environment. And last of all, what I'd say is bring back purpose in work. Right? So if we're going to be intentional about building the culture, is bringing back purpose and meaning in the work. Now, this is something that a lot of businesses have got away from over the last 2 years because, again, of that efficiency model and safety and security. But getting back to thinking about why. Why do we do what we do? Why do we care about it? What impact we want to have on the community? What impact do we want to have on the world? How do we want to shape people's lives? A lot of those extrinsic motivators, some of those perks that businesses were focused on 2 years ago, they're extrinsic, and they're not creating an emotional connection to the work, that place where people can feel intrinsically connected to their careers. So start bringing back purpose and meaning into the discussion. That doesn't mean that things like compensation doesn't matter. Of course it matters. Of course it does. But it's that and, right? It's compensation and culture. It's compensation and culture and well-being. It's plus, plus, plus. And one of the things that businesses have lost connection to is this concept of purpose and meaning in their work. And that can create a different level of emotional commitment. It means you can take these predatory compensation discussions off the table, because people feel connected and emotionally connected to their work. They're intrinsically connected to it, and they're growing.
Yeah, and I think, as an individual, personally, having a purpose, it's what's driving me. And you're saying compensation is one thing, but if you leave a company for the compensation, often means that there's other thing in the background. So it's probably the feeling of not being recognized or not being seen or not having a purpose. So I think purpose is very, very important thing for employees those days. Yeah.
And in order to activate that, you have to know the person. You have to get to know them and understand them, and it changes the conversation then as well.
Yeah. I want to bring it back to flexibility, because we are all demanding flexibility, right? And we're getting it, but we're also seeing a lot of people still living the agency world due to increased stress, anxiety, and burnout. We work from home. There's no lines between our life and our work life and our personal life, and we use our personal devices, so it makes it really, really hard to draw a hard line. It's a challenge that all industries are facing, and particularly in agencies. The people that are on this call work with very, very hard deadlines, heavy workloads. So what advice can you offer to those agencies, and how they can respond to the growing pressure of being flexible while proactively protecting health, well-being, and still performing and growing?
Yeah. That's a complex question, Jenny, and there's a lot in that. But I think this is where I like to draw on some of my experiences as an elite athlete as well. I'd spent 14 years in the Olympic team, and although the single-minded focus of an athlete sometimes doesn't translate to the complex multi-dimensional roles that we have in the corporate world, there's some universal principles that I think still apply. And one of them is being aware of when we need to be on, and being aware of when we need to be off, right? And creating boundaries around that. So first of all, for leaders, it's imperative and incumbent on you to role model boundaries. What does it mean to set boundaries? And developing your own conviction around that. I think setting some principles around the pace of work. So obviously client expectations are important. It's the same for our small firm here. We've got 40 people. We've got an enviable client list, and we have to orientate a pace of our work around our clients, because that's what their expectations are. Yeah. So that is important. But you also have to set your expectations around what your peers or colleagues expect from each other as well. So that's where things like only working from home or only working in a certain environment doesn't make sense. It has to be around what we expect from each other. So pace of the client work, pace of the peers, and as well as what you need from your own performance and recovery. So there's a really simple model that I do love for energy management over time and to enable recovery. And that's that there's 4 types of energy systems that we have to draw on as people. One's the physical, which is obviously driven by our sleep, our water, our diet, our activity. But our physical energy system, our cognitive energy system, so how much we're using our brains or how fatigued are our brains. Our emotional energy, so the extent to which we're feeling happy, sad, and all of the many emotions that can be between that. So being aware of our emotions and understanding what we need. And last of all, transcendental energy system. So how we're thinking about connecting to a more universal connection to the world. So purpose, meaning, spiritual, whatever it might be, but something bigger than ourselves. So if you think about those 4 energy systems and creating the access to that for yourself as well as the people that work for you, like there's really interesting insights and research that come out about physical well-being in green space. So just 15 minutes in green space. So what I mean by that is your backyard or anywhere like that. 15 minutes, there's a noticeable decrease in heart rate, cortisol rates, and heart rate variability for well-being, right? So you can create 15 minutes of green space. You can create some supportive scaffolding for well-being. Cognitive regeneration or recovery can come from engaging in the types of things that you like thinking about. What do you like to read about? How do you like to engage in fiction and non-fiction? What are the topics you like to discuss and debate? But something that's not the same energy system that you use every day at work can promote cognitive recovery, emotional recovery, but positive psychology constructs. So taking the dog for a walk, playing with the kids, doing something that creates laughter and joy, watching stand-up comedy or going to stand-up comedy, like anything that promotes a positive emotion promotes emotional recovery. And last of all, that concept of transcendental energy, connecting to community, connecting to spiritual energy systems. But Jenny and I know each other from the Surf Lifesaving Club, right? That's one of the reasons why we've had a chance to connect today. And I spent yesterday morning digging sand out of a shed because the waves broke over the beach from this big East Coast swell that's coming up the East Coast of New South Wales. And, like digging sand out of a shed for about 4 hours, there's something really, really satisfying about that as a volunteer, doing that for your community. And what is it for you? What are your community groups that you engage with and that support your sense of well-being? So last thing I'll say as well about well-being is important, and it is to recognise that you cannot own someone else's well-being. We all have to own our own well-being. As a leader and a business owner, it's important to enable it. It's important to create access to it. You can guide people to it. You can even lead people to it. Mm-hmm. But being aware of your own personal emotional boundaries is that you cannot own someone else's well-being. We all have to own our own.
Yeah, we have to stand up for ourselves. Very, very important. I think sometimes we are too guilty of waiting things to be brought to us, but you're right. I think, we are responsible for that and our own well-being. So it has to come from us as individuals. Great. Exactly. That's great. I mean, this session is recorded, guys. So all those great advice, you can go back to it and, take notes. I have a couple more questions. I know we're running out of time, so I'm just going to do this very quickly. There was one for you, David, around, learning and developments. So pre-COVID, we had lunch and learns, group training session, where, it was common to bring the whole agency or the publisher together to learn and develop. But with remote and hybrid working models now at play, what options should agency consider ensuring they are still delivering on this side? We still need to learn and develop.
Okay, so I'll try to keep this punchy because I know we're over time, but I just want to, while I have the moment, to say, James, thank you for that. Some great tips there. Just the one where you say, just get outside with the greenery, that definitely resonated with me. So thanks for your tips. Look, as far as your question, this is a tricky one, and it's one that we continue to work on as well. I think anytime an employer is investing on their employees' ongoing learning and development, it creates pathways to better ways of working, a more positive workplace culture. Upskilling and reskilling is particularly important in advertising right now because the landscape keeps changing rapidly. Pre-COVID lunch and learns, as you mentioned, and group training sessions were always a common way to bring the agency teams together. But with remote and hybrid working models now, you have to look at some new options. So some key stats about what's going on in the world right now, because we obviously see the skills that are coming in and out on the LinkedIn.com platform. But something that's key for you guys to know right now is that 50% of all employees will need reskilling by 2025. It's just right around the corner. And then 85% of the jobs that will exist in 2030 have not even been invented yet. They don't exist right now. But as far as things you can think about, I'm just going to call out just 3 headlines and I won't go deep. One, leverage. Oh, my AirPods just died.
No, I can hear you.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, okay, great.
It's even better now.
AirPods went, doo, 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 doo. All right. I'm still here. So the three things you can do is leverage your managers as a community for learning champions. So I think you mentioned that earlier as well, James. 91% of employees say that it's important for their manager to encourage learning and development. The second is use technology to foster more interactions while learning. So, whether that's, as you mentioned before, your laptop, your phones, online learning, bring the training and development to where your employees can access it just in time. And then the third is leave opportunities for community learning in your organization's day to day. So establish a culture of continuous learning. It does create a more agile and resilient workforce. So those would be the three things that I would suggest as tips, at least stuff that we've been doing as well at LinkedIn.
Yeah, and doing it pretty well. It's also been part of my journey at starting at LinkedIn. I think we also very encouraged to take the time to learn and grow, because in this industry, you take 2 weeks off, you come back and everything's changed. So you really have to stay on your toes, and that's something that's very, very important. And also give you this sentiment of purpose as well, because you're learning and you know more, and you can share more with your clients, and you bring more to the table. All right, I'll ask you one last question, James, and it's it's also related to your previous life. So you've carved out a career as a performance expert in the elite sports circuit during your previous life as an Olympic rower, as well as in your current role today as a performance consultant at Maximus. So what learning can you share from your personal and professional experience about the correlation between culture and performance?
Thanks, Jenny. I think for me, there's three things I've learned about human performance and business performance that are universal. First of all, you need to be really clear on the objective. You need to be really clear on the goal. You need to have a very clear and understood picture of what that looks like, so you can work back from that. We as human beings, and therefore those that are in business, are goal orientated. We are all goal orientated.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it means it's getting to the end of the day, whether it means getting to a holiday over Easter, whether it's building a business, whatever it might be, we're all goal orientated, and we can focus our activities and attention when we have a really clear line of sight to the goals. So get the goals right and be really clear on what that is. Second of all, there's a whole system around us that we can tap into that is full of latent resources, full of them, right? And especially in the agency world, where we're always resource constrained, staff constrained. Be aware of the system out there. But there is resources everywhere, and there's always access to more. And I think one of the things that the pandemic has taught us is that we can find ways to innovate around getting resources and making things happen and getting outcomes for clients when we need to. It's demonstrated our capacity to do that. So what's the system that you need to lean into and have ready to activate when you need it, especially latent resources? And last of all, we have to be able to sequence the inputs over many time horizons to be able to get to a big picture goal. So be aware of what they need to be and what the sequence is, right? So over long periods of time. So they're the three things I think that are universal from high performance sport. Be clear on the goal, know the system so you can access the resources in them, and sequence all the inputs to get it right to ladder up towards a goal. And last of all, what I'd say is, I mentioned it before, I'm a huge believer in it because it's done a lot for me and done a lot for my clients, is connect purpose to all of that. Connect your purpose to your ambition, to your goal, what you're looking to achieve. If I think about some great examples, Ronnie Khan from Oz Harvest, and what an incredibly inspirational organisation and person when it comes to being clear on how purpose can change the way that you think about business. There's this fantastic conductor called Benjamin Zander. I don't know if anyone's come across him, but he talks about how only 3% of the world like classical music. And the classical music world's problem is that I think, well, if it's 3%, how can we get it to 4%? And he says, when you are clear on your purpose, like he is, how would you walk and how would you talk and how would you be if you believed everyone loves classical music, they just don't know about it yet? And so for him, that shows up in the way he thinks and the way he walks and the way he talks, everything he does. So whatever it takes for you to do the work on your purpose and finding the ways to get there, I might encourage people to do that, because the emotional commitment that you have and the emotional commitment that others have is disproportionate when it comes to the way we think about performance.
Right, and that's very communicative as well. People can feel that and, you know, embark in the journey with you when the, you know, emotions are present. So thank you very much. Sorry, we have to conclude this session. Thank you so much, James and David, for your time. Thanks to everyone who joined the call. We will be sharing the presentation and the research, and as well as David and James' contact if you want to get in touch. And I'm here to answer any of your questions after this presentation. So thank you so much for your time.